Heat lay on King's Landing like a fever and would not break. It came from the baking stones of the Red Castle and the river's sour breath and the press of too many souls, and everywhere it tasted faintly of iron. Eddard Stark stood in the godswood that had no god, beneath a brown oak where once a white tree had offered up 1,000 red eyes to sky and wind. Hollow steps had brought him here. The pain in his mended leg was a hammered coin under his skin, hot on one side and cold on the other. The shade of the leaves moved across the ground, and he watched the pattern shift and thought of the snows of Winterfell, of bark like bone, of the way his breath had smoked in the morning air. He had sent for the children. There were 100 reasons not to, all of them speaking with Robert's rough voice or his own. It was not honorable, it would be seen as a taking, it would unhorse the queen and set the city trembling, and what were children but the most helpless part of any quarrel? Yet Eddard had spent too long among lions and spiders to keep faith with notions that only warmed their holders. If he let things run as they would run to blood. He would not have children's blood on his hands. Not Sansa's, not Arya's, not Myrcella's or Tommen's. He had seen too much of war not to know where it always turned its head when it fed. The wind rattled the leaves, too dry for a summer that had gone on longer than any man could remember. He smelled river rot and the faint varnish of the castle's new painted doors. A garden of a godswood, with its fountains and trimmed hedges, its old faith cut out root and bough. He rested a hand on the oak and listened to the tread of men. Tommen came first, heavy as his name, a leather cap jammed down over thinning hair. "They're coming, M-Lord." Eddard nodded. He had told Tommen exactly what words to say and how to say them. He had sent Varley with him. Varley had a way of folding himself into the edges of rooms until nothing but a mouse's attention noticed he was still there, and when trouble came, he unfolded into hard angles and moved faster than you expected. They were good men. They were not enough men if this went wrong, but good men nonetheless. Arya slipped like a shadow from between the trimmed yews, hair stuck to her brow, face sheened with sweat and bright with curiosity. "Is it true?" she blurted, too fast for Septa Mordane to catch her. "They're coming to visit us?" "Arya," Eddard said. She fidgeted. "I won't do anything. I'll be good." Then her mouth tugged sideways. "Mostly." Sansa followed after the Septa, precise in every step, hair smoothed to gold and eyes wide and cautious. She had been quiet as a bell all morning, and quiet Sansa was bold Sansa's truer sister. A softer concealment, but concealment still. Eddard gentled his voice. "They're to be our guests. You will be kind." Sansa nodded eagerly. "Of course, father. Princess Myrcella is lovely." "And Tommen?" Arya asked, not hiding a grimace at the word lovely. "A boy as any other," Eddard said. He remembered Tommen as round with baby fat and earnest as a pup. He remembered Myrcella's hands as neat and careful, how she had watched the tourney with a child's awe and a young lady's care for what could be spoken and what could not. Children both put sorrow in his bones. Varley came next, and with him the Kingsguard, 2 white cloaks like heat-struck ghosts. Ser Meryn, with the wet-lipped dullness of a man born not to think. Ser Aerys, grave and young and anxious despite his solemn mouth. Between them walked Princess Myrcella and Prince Tommen, hand in hand, as if they expected some trap in the grass that could swallow the both of them if they let go. Septa Eglantine fussed around them like a broody hen. Your Grace, Lord Stark. It is most irregular." "The hand requested," Ser Aerys said with a skeptical glance at Eddard's cane. "And the Queen agreed." He made the last word slow, like something hard to chew. "We will remain." "Of course you will," Eddard said. "You are sworn to their guardship, and no roof in this castle will better keep a promise than mine." He inclined his head to Myrcella and Tommen. "You honor us." Tommen found a smile. "Ser Pounce had kittens," he said without preface. 3. The black one is fastest. Perhaps he will catch the great black Tom. Then, Arya said, flicker quick. "The one they call Balerion." Tommen frowned as if at a puzzle. "They named a cat after a dragon?" "The cat came first," Arya said. "Maybe the dragon was named for the cat." Then she remembered herself and ducked her head a fraction. "Your Highness." Myrcella watched Arya with a bright curiosity that remembered to be veiled a heartbeat later. "We are glad to come," she said. "The corridors are so hot near Mother's rooms." "Cooler stone in the Tower of the Hand," Eddard said. "You'll eat with my daughters and share their lessons for today. After, perhaps you would like to see the yard. The Master-at-Arms is dreadful, but the Kennel Master has a kind disposition, though without dogs to manage he grows peevish. A small, dry jest to make them breathe easier." Tommen's mouth twitched. Myrcella's eyes warmed. Septa Eglantine tutade. "Their Grace's lessons." "Continue," he said, soft and firm together. "Septa Mordain will be honored to welcome you. You will hardly find a sterner mistress of letters." Septa Mordain stiffened as if struck, then folded into an expression of thin-lipped righteousness. "We will have an afternoon of exemplary deportment," she said. "And penmanship." Tommen's smile died. Eddard turned before anyone could dwell on the boy's grimace. "Tommerd," he said. "You know the door I mean." "Yes, M-Lord." Tommerd glanced at Ser Meryn as if measuring how quickly the man could move with all that belly. "And the men?" "2 at the great door, 2 on the stair, 1 in the passage to the kitchens. No one without my leave." Ser Meryn's eyes went small. "No. 1." The word did not like the taste of itself in his mouth. "Their mother will send if she wishes them returned," Eddard said, letting the truth lie where it could be seen. "I will go to the Queen once the children are settled and speak to her directly. You may be present when I do, Ser Meryn. It will ease your mind." Ser Aerys' head turned slightly. "You mean to?" "I mean to keep them safe in my hall and under my bread and salt," Eddard said, and in Winterfell that would have been a kind of magic. Here it was only an old thing dressed in new cloth. He would make of it what he could. "You will be with them always, Ser Aerys. Eat with them, pass the day with them, sleep by their door if you like." Myrcella bit her lip. "We did not bring our things, my lord. We have more things than we have children," Eddard said. "Sansa will see you clothed in something cool. Arya," he paused. "Arya will present you with a collection of bruises if you let her talk you into wooden swords." He said that for the smile it won from Tommen and from Salt and Pepper Aerys both, and the corner of Myrcella's mouth fought a laugh and lost. They crossed the garden, then the open walk that gave a view eastward over roofs like baked loaves and masts thick as winter trees, toward a river that glittered with oily colors. Eddard's cane clicked against the stone, and his guards became a wall that had edges and weight. The Tower of the Hand rose in front of them, all red stone and square windows and the arms carved above the door that were not his by blood but his by burden. The air within was cooler almost at once, the way a cellar remembers its own night. There was bread on the board. There was salt in a dish white as sea foam. He broke bread and dipped it and gave it first to Myrcella and then to Tommen, and to the Kingsguard after, because they too were guests if not by their own choosing. Septa Mordain, tight with disapproval, yet took the bread and ate. Some customs endure because they are strong enough to shame even their enemies. Sansa curtsied to Myrcella. The girls measured one another while pretending not to, as girls do when the space between them is the future. Arya, smudged knees and all, went for Tommen with an earnestness that burned off his shyness. In short order, Ser Aerys was drafted into watching a game that involved a string and a ball, and opinions about cats became theology. Eddard let himself stand back from it, and let himself feel the old grief that came with watching children look at one another and see only today. He remembered seeing Robb wrestle Theon in the muddy yard years ago, remembered Bran wobbling at a saddle's edge and swearing he would not fall again. The dead passed through him like a chill wind. He had never liked the Red Keep, which seemed always to be made of corners that something could lurk behind. To lay a measure of his heart here, to wedge it into the stone between his household and Robert's brood, seemed to him at once a betrayal of everything he had ever tried to be and the most iron-bound duty he had ever been given. So be it. The old gods would understand. The new god would find a prayer that fit, or else neither would, and he would stand alone and do what was in front of him. When the household had arranged itself, Eddard left them. Tommerd moved his men as directed. Varley vanished into stairwells and turned up again in the kitchens like a piece of furniture you had meant to throw away. Desmond and Will took the first door guard. As he left, Eddard caught Myrcella watching him go, her hands folded. He thought of Catelyn at that age and felt old. He took only one man with him to the Godswood. The air there was still hot, but the leaves made a dapple that tricked the eye into believing it could cool a man, and he needed even a trick. She came without retinue, unhurried, hair a high-flown banner of gold that heat could not make hang heavy. From a distance, Cersei Lannister was a beauty of paintings, flawless and remote and hard as the gems around her throat. Up close, she was a thing that breathed, and Eddard saw the ways that breathing went too quickly and then too slow. "My lady," he said. She smiled. It was not a smile that meant ease, but the shape of one worn like a scar. "My lord." There were guards somewhere in the hedges. He was not that much a fool, but not close enough to hear. Varys had told him as much the night before, when the eunuch had uncoiled himself from shadow and perfume and said, "I am only a little bird, Lord Stark, but birds will sing for you if you ask them kindly and pay them better." Eddard had replied that Winterfell used snares and salt, not songs. Varys had seemed to sigh without moving his lips. All the songs, my lord, become snares if the right ears are listening. He had told Cersei to meet him here. He did not have to tell her why. "What have you done?" she said, and made no attempt to make it a question. "Brought your children to my table," he said. "They are safe." Her mouth whitened. "You? I will not have them hurt," he said. "Not by you, not by me, not by any man within these walls. I have seen what comes of children caught in quarrels that wear crowns. I am tired of it. I told you once that I would not keep silent while the realm was made a lie. You pretend at holiness," she said. "It is unbecoming. It is stubbornness," he said, "and the dust from old roads." He had not meant to be gentle and found he could not help himself. "They are safe. They will be honored while they are under my roof. They will be returned to you when the king." His mouth fought for the right word and settled on none. "When we can speak plain in a room where oaths have weight." "You dare," she said softly. "I do what must be done." The wind came through the hedge and made a sound like someone tearing books. Her eyes had found his cane and then traveled up to his face. There was something new in them. "Renly came to you." "He did, Eddard," he said. He remembered the young lord's minty breath and the excited tilt of his shoulders. He remembered how Renly had said, "We take them at dawn," and he had said, "No, children are not weapons," and Renly had gone away angry and frightened, which was as honest as any man could be. He had a plan. "I have another. And I am to be grateful for your mercy?" She took a step nearer. Her perfume had a sharpness under the flowers, like wine that had thought too long in its cask. "Men are always merciful to what they mean to keep for themselves." "Your Grace," he said, because the title cost him nothing and the courtesy cost him less. "Go. Take your brother and your father and your golden banners and go to Casterly Rock. When the king returns." "When he returns?" It was a lance of a sound, and the hedgebirds fell silent. He looked at her, the quiet pressed like a weight against the back of his neck. "He is hunting," Eddard said. "Is he?" The gold in her eyes had a coldness beneath it like old coins. "Lord Stark, this city would shift like a tide if I moved my foot. Do not think you can stand against that. Do not think your north will come swimming through the summer to fetch you if you sink. They will send prayers. It is what northerners do." "You mistake us," he said. He thought of Catelyn, of Robb, of the names of men he had known since boyhood, of the stone lettered and the stone blank. "And you mistake me. Robert was my friend. What there is of me that can be a friend still belongs to him." He had not meant to say it, but there it was between them. "Leave before he comes. Take the understanding I offer, for your own sake, for theirs." He did not speak the truth he had learned in Pycelle's book and in the color of hair that refused to come out anything but orebright. He did not need to. She knew he knew. The knowledge stood at his shoulder with a hand on its sword. Cersei stared at him as if she could unmake him by will. "Do you think you can keep them from me?" she asked at last softly. Do you think there is a lock in this castle the Lannisters did not pay for? I think there are men in this castle who do not wear lions, he said. And there are doors that answer to my key and no other. And bread and salt, which are older than you or I. She lifted her chin just so. You have not won. You have only made the game worth playing. He had never liked her. In this moment he pitied her. I am not playing. Oh, but you are. Then she smiled in the other way, the one that admitted only to herself that it was a smile. And you have made your first mistake. He waited for the strike that did not come, the shout, the rush of men from hedge or quay. When none came, he inclined his head. Good day, your grace. He returned to the Tower of the Hand with his heart scraped raw and clean. He expected the city to catch fire before he reached the steps. The city held its breath instead. He expected a reef of Lannister men bristling with red cloaks. He found Janos Slynt and 2 gold cloaks who looked as if they had been waiting in the sun too long, and Peter Baelish with a smile like the cut on a pocket. An odd household you gather, Littlefinger said, his voice round and friendly and tasting of scorn under the sweetness. What will your wife say when she hears you have taken in 2 golden birds? Perhaps, Eddard said, and kept his face flat as the blade he could not draw here. She will be grateful someone is offering the children in this city a little kindness. Kindness is expensive, Littlefinger said. Jan. Slynt, Eddard said, facing the man, who had the thick neck of a butcher and the shifty eyes of a gambler not very good at cards. Your men are to remain at their posts. The peace of the city benefits all. The Queen entrusted me with its peace, Janos Slynt said, swallowing after the word queen, as if it scratched his throat on the way down. The king entrusted me, Eddard said, and left me his seal. This I do in his name. It was a lie that tasted near enough like truth when you looked at it sidelong. Robert had given him the seal. Robert had not told him to keep the queen's children. But Robert had never told him to stand aside while lions made the city their pasture. Of course, Littlefinger murmured. We are all loyal men. Varys slid from shadow as if the shadow were his own servant. What a rare day, to see so many loyal men in one corridor, he sighed. My Lord Hand, I have a tidbit of fish for your table. The king hunts. He has drunk more wine than boar's fear will require. Ser Barristan watches him and wrings his hands. Lancel fills the cup and does not watch the king. Why tell me? Eddard asked, and Varys's eyes went sad in a way that might have been honest, which made it more dangerous than the rest. Because if I tell you, someone will be alive who will make certain something good happens for someone besides the lions, Varys said. And because I have been in this city too long not to seek the one man who might yet make me less sick to my stomach when I remember why I was born. Spare me your poetry, Littlefinger said, bored. Tell us which way the wind will blow, and to whom we should sell our sails. To the realm, Varys said softly. Then his voice was flippant again. But I would not pretend I grasped the cost of cloth. Eddard went up to his solar and sat with parchment and ink until the light changed. He wrote to Stannis Baratheon on Dragonstone the words plain and hard. He did not write treason. He wrote truth, and truth could look like treason in a room where men had grown fat on lies. He sealed it with the direwolf and sent it with men who had good legs and better luck, and then sent another and a third on a different road because luck was a thing to be wooed with numbers. He went to his daughters. The household had taken on a strange quiet, the way a lake did when a storm was running its way over distant hills. Sansa sat with Myrcella, their heads bowed over a hoop and a skein of blue thread. They were speaking of songs. Sansa's taste ran to nights all in shining and tongues full of honey, and Myrcella's to those same nights seen through the veil of a princess's lessons. Eddard listened and let the ache for Catelyn and for Robb and for Bran and Rickon make him kinder when he spoke. Arya and Tommen had taken over the corner nearest the window and were arguing passionately about whether you could win a battle with cats. Not with cats, Arya said. With shadows. You can't command shadows, Tommen said earnestly. You can if you are quiet, Arya said. Septa Mordane had given up on deportment for the hour and contented herself with penmanship. Ser Aerys Oakheart stood by the door, and Eddard thought he had never seen a man so grateful to be told that his duty was to watch children play. Ser Meryn ate bread and breathed through his mouth and looked like all doors made him nervous. They ate together that night. Eddard had the cooks try their hands at lemon cakes, and they did not do so badly that Sansa could not be made happy by praise and sugar, and Myrcella's delight was a delicate, well-schooled light. Tommen ate with seriousness, and when Arya stole a second cake, he put half of his own on her plate as if it would make them even. "Thank you," Arya said, making fun of courtesy by saying it correctly, and Tommen laughed. The city did not burn that night. It held its breath and waited. In the deep hours, men's feet ran on stone not under Eddard's roof, and small bells rang, and somewhere a woman sang in a voice so raw it was hardly voice at all. He slept in his chair in the solar and woke with his neck in knots and a taste of tin in his mouth, and Tommered at the door, hair damp with sweat. "Ravens from the king's party, M-Lord." Bor took him. For a moment, Eddard could not understand the words. Then he did. The room leant inward. It steadied when he put his hand on the table. Tommered's face went soft with pity like a bruise. He had liked Robert well enough in his rough, simple way, and he knew what it was for boys who had once run together in cold fields. "He lives?" Eddard asked. "For now. They're bringing him in." "Varys?" Eddard said, and did not know he was going to speak the name until it was out of his mouth. "Fetch Varys, and send for Pycelle." And he stopped. He had a list in his head, and the first names on it were the ones he could not write without making enemies of men he had to rule. He swallowed. Ser Barristan when he returns. Peter Baelish. Renly if he is not with the king. Janos Slynt. He found himself hating the sound of that last name and reminded himself that hating men did not change what their hands could hold. Varys came gliding and smelling of some sweet. "A sorrowful day," he sighed. "So it would seem," Eddard said. His mouth was dry. "I will see the king when he arrives." "Pycelle will see him first," Varys said. "Then you, and then the queen." "No," Eddard said, and his own voice sounded like a thing that had been frozen and cracked. "I will see him first." He was the hand. He was the friend who had come 1,000 leagues to haul a man out of his cups and into his duty, and had found instead that the man had more love for his cups than he had for his crown. And he was the man who had taken the queen's children into custody in a way no word wanted to name. The order would not stand if he did not stand it. The day ran like a blade. They brought Robert on a cart because no man could bear him on a litter without making him scream. Blood had made a map of his tunic and thigh. He stank of wine and pain, and the boar's tusk had written a ruin on him that no leech or prayer could set right. Barristan Selmy walked at his side like a penance. Lancel trailed behind, eyes red-rimmed. Eddard did not look at the boy. Robert's eyes were clear when they found Ned. "Ha!" he breathed. "The wolf." "The king," Eddard said. He knelt despite his leg and despite the groan his bones gave him for it. The world had narrowed to the space between breath and breath. "Robert, my brother." "Your face," Robert muttered as if it pleased him. "Still long." "You always thought it too long," Eddard said. "Should have been funny." It was a grief so vast he had no place to set it down. "I brought a board. For writing." Robert's mouth twisted. "Right? Make it right." His eyes slid sideways. "Not her. Not that bitch and her whelps." "Peace," Eddard said, and only knew it as a lie because the word had no place in his mouth. He took the seal when Robert told him to take it. He wrote what Robert said, and he wrote something else in place of what Robert would have had him write if he had known the words to choose. He wrote the rightful heir, and watched the quill put down treason in the neat black lines Septim Mordain liked so much. He folded it up. He sealed it. He kept it. He had intended to tell Robert everything. He found, when he stared into the face that had driven boars and princes before it, and had now been felled by a pig like any other field drunk, that he could not. The king drifted. He made a crude jest about women. He slept with his mouth open. Pycelle quavered like jelly and pretended he had wisdom. Varys stood with his hands folded as if in prayer and did not close his eyes. Renly came looking young and hungry and asked to speak privately. and Eddard would have given him that except the moment reveled around them. When Eddard looked up again, Renly was gone, and with him a score of Tyrell knights, and that smell of summer rose that clung to Ser Loras like a promise. Littlefinger counted everything in the room and then counted it again on some other scale invisible to everyone else. When the Queen came, the air changed. Cersei Lannister wore a gown of pale green that made the blood on her mouth look like the wine she affected. She did not go to Robert. She stood and looked at Eddard. He thought of all the things a mother's face could be and saw none of them there. Then again, perhaps he did. Mothers in the north had that look too, when wolves came too close to the fold and there was only one spear in the corner. "The king will not die today," she said, as if it would make it so. "No," Eddard said, because today was still true. "But soon." Her eyes moved to the seal at his belt, then back to his face. "We will do our duty," she murmured. It was every word a lie, yet it had the shape of a prayer. He had the will. He had the children. He had letters on the road to Dragonstone. He had his own men in tight knots at every stair they could call theirs. He had the city half his and half hers, and the part in the middle a mire that could swallow anyone. The day ended. Another began. In the morning the bells tolled long and low, and everything that had been hard became harder. Men wore black without waiting for direction. There were tears in the kitchens and laughter in the pot shops and bets in the alleys, and all of it had the rhythm of a city that wakes to a new king and does not yet know his name. The small council met. Stale air and stale bread, and men whose breath smelled of whatever their fear had made them feed on the night before. "Prince Joffrey will require our..." Pycelle began. "King Joffrey," Cersei said at once, and placed a hand on the table that glittered. She had come attended by Ser Meryn and Ser Boros, each thick as spoiled milk, and by Janos Slynt, who carried his hat in both hands and seemed to think that made him humble. Eddard took out the paper and laid it on the table like a sword. "Robert named a Lord Protector," he said, and did not look at her when he said it, because he would not look for permission where none was owed. "To serve until the rightful heir comes of age." "Joffrey is of age," Cersei said. She did not pick up the paper. She did not need to. "He is 12, Eddard said. "Old enough to mount a horse and yet too young to wear a crown?" Littlefinger said, amused. "Joffrey cannot be king," Eddard said, and looked at her now steadily. He had meant to speak it in a quieter room, but rooms had been taken from him. "He is not Robert's son." Silence made a hollow of the chamber. Varys pressed a finger to his lips as if to hush the world. Pycelle opened his mouth and found nothing in it. Renly started to speak and did not. Littlefinger's smile curdled but did not break. Cersei's eyes were like sun on sand. "Treason," she said, and when she picked up the paper she did not bother to break the seal. She tore it clean down the middle and let it fall in the bowl of fresh figs. The fruit bled sweetly around it. "Seize him," she told Janos Slynt. Goldcloaks moved. Eddard saw all at once the way the room had been set like a board. He saw the way Slynt had shifted his weight before she spoke. He saw that someone, Littlefinger, had stood rather than sit where chair 2 might hem him in. Ser Meryn took a step. "Ser Boros Huesed." Varys lifted a hand as if to intercede, and let it fall without saying a word. "Janos," Eddard said. He did not raise his voice. He had no voice to raise. "You are a sworn man of the city. You are not a Lannister man." "I am a man of the king," Janos Slynt said. The words came like phlegm. "King Joffrey." Now, the plan had been that there would be a plan to meet this moment, and there was not as such. He had meant for Littlefinger's coin to speak where his honor could not. He had meant for bread and salt to be a magic she dared not break. He had meant for hostages who were not hostages to make of the day something less than a battlefield. Yet when Slynt lifted his hand, Eddard did not think of coins or magic. He thought of Tommen's round face lifting with earnestness, of Myrcella measuring her smile like a lady already, of Sansa's careful stitches, of Arya's scowling laugh. "Ser Aerys," he said. Ser Aerys did not stand to attention in this room. He had asked not to attend the council, and Eddard had granted it, knowing none of the Lannisters would think to note the absence of a quiet white cloak from a room full of louder ones. Ser Ares stood instead by a door in the Tower of the Hand, with children at his back. Ser Ares, Eddard said again, in a voice no one present could hear. Keep them safe. He stood. If any man here lays a hand on me, he said, and his voice had the iron of a winter river in it. He breaks guest right laid today and yesterday and a day before that, and he will answer for it. We were not your guests, Cersei said. You stole what is mine. Eddard looked at her and saw she believed it. I took what is the realms, he said, as the hand, and I have their lives in my care. I will not see them harmed. If that means I must be harmed in their stead, so be it. Janos Slynt hesitated. The hesitation was so slight you could have mistaken it for a fly passing his face. But it was there. He looked at Cersei. He looked at Littlefinger. Littlefinger gave him nothing but a lazy glance and a shrug. Varys looked at the figs. Renly stared at Eddard and did not seem to know whether to be horrified or admiring. Pycelle reached for his cup with hands that shook. Take him, Cersei said again softly. Goldcloaks moved again, slower than they might have. Eddard did not reach for the dagger he had not brought and would not use. He let them put a hand around his arm. He did not pull away. You will not touch my daughters, he said to Cersei, and for the first and only time that day her composure cracked. You have mine, she said. And they are well, Eddard said. They will be well so long as I am. The lie in that was not in the words but in the world. The world seldom kept such balances. Yet he saw her make the count in her head. He saw her see the board anew. Her fingers tapped their rhythm on the table. In the name of King Joffrey, Janos Slynt said, and two double chins bobbed like a pair of seals in a storm. You are under arrest, Lord Stark. It was always going to feel like this, Eddard thought, like falling again and again, and the ground always below you and never quite where you can put your feet. They took him to a room whose window he did not need. He had not sent for Littlefinger and Littlefinger did not come. That, at least, got left where it belonged. Varys came, soft-footed and soft-voiced. A poor business, he murmured, but perhaps less poor than others. Your men, well, some have been bought, some have been broken, some have done the buying and the breaking. You know how it is. My daughters, Eddard said, the Queen's children. Where they must be where you put them, Varys said. The Tower of the Hand is very stout when it wishes to be. He hesitated. Ser Ares Oakheart is a man with eyes and a soul and a fear of failure. Your men respect him, oddly. The other white one. He tilted his head. He eats. She will come for them, Eddard said. Yes, Varys said. But she will come like a woman crossing a river where she cannot see the bottom. And she will be careful. Tell Ser Ares, Eddard said, if you can, that I hold him to his oath. He is not to yield them, not to Lannister men, not to gold cloaks, not to... He stopped, then laughed once, a dry bark that made his chest ache. Not to me, even. Not unless the realm stands in the door behind him and says so with one voice. Varys gave him an unreadable look. As you command. And my daughters, Eddard said. If there is a way to get Arya out. Your older girl is easier to lead, Varys said. Your younger... Ah, the point of your steel with a little blood on it. He spread his hands. We will see what the gods make possible. Arya did not wait for gods. The men came for her in the afternoon. Meryn Trant brought 5 red cloaks and a man with a chain and a bald head who stank of onions. Syrio Farrell was teaching her the way he taught her. Step, breath, cut the air and let it not cut you now again. Ser Meryn watched a moment as if offended by the way their feet kept moving, then said in a bored voice, The Hands girl will come with us. And the girl, Syrio said, will come with me. His teeth showed. You go, look for other girls. It is the king's command, Ser Meryn said, annoyed. When a man says he is king, Syrio replied, some other man must say, oh, show me. We of Bravos are very curious. Meryn Trant drew his sword. The red cloaks drew theirs. Syrio had a wooden blade. It did not matter. It never did if the man holding it was a sword. The room became a storm of chips and splinters and curses and breath. Arya ducked when Syrio told her to duck, and leapt when he told her to leap, and screamed when he said, "Scream." And at the end there were 3 red cloaks on the floor with their knuckles broken, and one with an arm that bent wrongly, and Meryn Trant's face was a map of fury. The bald man with the chain had not moved at all, and when Syrio turned to face Meryn, he stepped in behind Syrio and threw the chain. It struck the Bravosi across the temple. He staggered. Meryn took his moment and did what dull men do when they have sharp iron in their hands. "Arya," Syrio said, and his voice was perfectly calm. "Run." She ran. She ran through kitchens and across courtyards and under lines of drying linen and over a boy who did not move fast enough. She ran past guards who thought she was some scullion's brat until they looked again at her face and said, "That one," and she ran faster. She found Varley where he had told her to look if the day went wrong, and he had a bundle and a look that said a father with no children left would be a father to any child who needed one. "You'll be a rat for a while," he told her. "Can you be a rat?" "I can be a wolf," she said. He shook his head. "No wolves in this city. Put away your teeth. Be small and move sideways. Up." He lifted her into a hole in the wall that smelled of damp and old candles, and she moved through stone for what felt like a day and a night, belly to rock, hands scraping, breath very slow. She heard voices once and held still for an hour. When at last she came down, it was into a place that smelled of leather and wool, and Varley was there, and a woman with baker's flour on her forearms who put Arya in a cart under sacks and told her not to sneeze because flour is worse than the stranger for making girls give themselves away. The cart rolled. The city sounded different from under sacks. Arya was still a wolf inside her skin. She was also, by a hard act of will, very much a rat. Sansa did not run. Sansa sat very straight when the queen's men came and said, "We will receive you in your father's hall," and Sansa said, "We?" And they would not tell her who else would receive her, and it did not occur to her to refuse, because she had been raised to courtesy the way a knight was raised to arms. In the hall, Myrcella sat with her hands folded and her lower lip bitten, as if she held something there to keep it back. Tommen shook as if in a cold wind and would not let go of Ser Ares's glove. "Mother," Myrcella said at once, voice catching and then smoothing, "we are well, and that we mattered," kept Tommen from starting to cry, kept Ser Ares from drawing his sword. Cersei stood like a spear had been shoved down through her and into the flagstones. Her face had the dignity of a corpse burned the day before, all the beauty drawn tight and brittle. Behind her, Littlefinger wore a face empty of expression, and Janos Slint had the look of a butcher calculating how much meat a carcass held. Ser Boros stood with a hand on his gut, as if it needed guarding. "My lady mother," Sansa began and stopped, because she had said it wrong and it sounded ridiculous in her own ears, and what followed it would be worse. Cersei's gaze slid to her and slid away. It went straight back to the children she had borne. "Come," she said. Her voice did not even try to be gentle. We are leaving this room."
"Seais já o ordenat."
"Your Grace, the hand has placed them under." "The hand," Cersei said, with a contempt that overflowed without meaning to, "is a man in chains. The hand has no hands." Septa Mordain made a sound like a mouse stepping on a thumbtack and hid it in a cough. Tommen did not move. Will's eyes were fixed on the floor as if a single pebble could explain all the world to him. Desmond shifted his grip on his spear. The air began to fill with men's small noises. "Sansa," Myrcella said suddenly, in a voice like the first chord of a song, "would you walk with me?" Sansa could not see how she would walk anywhere while men in metal looked at one another like wolves with their hackles up. She could not see how any of them would leave the room without the floor growing teeth and eating them feet first. But she stood. "Of course," she said. "Your Grace." Myrcella held out her hand. Sansa took it. Tommen let go of Ser Ares's glove to take Sansa's other hand, and Ser Ares took a breath that he had been saving up since he woke, and said to Cersei Lannister in a voice that would have made Barristan Selmy turn his head, "While they are under guest right, I must stand against your command, Your Grace." Silence became a place. You had to decide whether you were going to step into it and be trapped or stay out and be seen. Cersei's eyes went very bright. and for a moment Eddard's pity for her became something else entirely. Then she turned her face away very slightly and said, "We will speak when I am alone with you, Ser Ares." "This is the time to speak," Ser Ares said. His lips were white. Littlefinger coughed a laugh into his fist and bent to whisper to Janos Slint. And Janos Slint's mouth made a shape like a purse being opened. Varys was not there, which was an answer to a different question. Pycelle at last spoke. Perhaps, decorum. Take a step toward them," Tommen growled to Ser Boros. "And I will put this spear through your good eye." Ser Boros froze, one step too few or one step too many. It scarcely mattered which. The room held. Cersei tried to breathe and her breath caught. Sansa's hand was wet in Myrcella's. "Enough," Cersei said at last, through teeth. "Enough." She looked at Sansa as if Sansa had personally invented enoughness and hoarded it from the world. "You," she said to Sansa, "speak." Sansa had rehearsal in her blood. The Septa had seen to that. She begged without seeming to, the way well-born girls did when the thing they wanted had a wall around it and a guard who only spoke money. "Please, your grace. It is so hot in the queen's rooms. It is cool here. May we stay one night more? Then tomorrow. Tomorrow anything you like." She felt Myrcella's hand tighten. "We shall shine like gold." The words were the clumsiest she had ever said, and yet they were the right ones. Cersei looked at her as if she could see through her skin and count her blood. "One night," she said. She looked at Ser Ares. "You will sleep by the door." "I will," he said. "And Slint," Cersei added, her voice very quiet, "will leave men beneath your window, my little bird, in case the hand's men feel the urge to fly." "Gold cloaks do not climb," Janos Slint said, frowning. "Then find some who can," she snapped, and turned on her heel and was gone. And Ser Boros, blinking, followed after like a sheep that had just noticed he was not the shepherd. That night the Tower of the Hand was a fortress. Men slept at angles against doors. Bread lay out and salt beside it, as if the sight of it could make cudgels forget what they had been carved for. Sansa slept with her head on Myrcella's shoulder, as if the two of them had been made sisters at birth. Tommen snored lightly and dreamed, because he smiled, and when he woke his face was tear-wet and he said he had been a cat and could go anywhere he wanted. And Arya was already a rumor with feet, already slipping toward the river, already stripping her name down to bone. Eddard Stark sat in his small cell and thought not of rescue or revenge but of doors. He had once thought honor was a straight road. It had become a door he must bar, a door he must open, a door he must stand before and not permit certain feet to pass. Varys came again, bringing water and the smell of lilacs and a whisper of night. "The queen has made a choice," he said softly. "She will not break bread and salt, not tonight. She will wait for the morrow. In the morning she will call a council. She will bring the boy to the throne. She will call for your head if you do not bend your neck. She will take back her children with a show of courtesy and a troop of spears. She prays you will be wise enough to prevent blood. There is a ship in the river with its sail furled. I know who owns it." "Dragonstone," Eddard said. The word was a harbor and a storm. "If we were to send the children, we should have sent them yesterday," Varys said. "Today, a cat may pass if it knows the cracks in the wall. A cat and a single child and a bundle and a shadow. 2 children make a procession. Gold gleams even at night. The more you add to a cart, the more the wheels creak." He spread his hands. "Forgive me. My life has left me with too many proverbs and too few boats." "Not the boat," Eddard said. "The September. The great September?" Varys lifted his brows. "Sanctuary. Even lions pretend to care for it. The faith is weak, but its walls are high. If they were held there," Eddard said, "with 100 women and old men between the queen's men and the children, they would be safe," Varys finished for him. "Or safe enough that her hand would shake when she signed the order to take them by force." His eyes were very dark in the candlelight. "You are more cunning than you pretend, my lord." "I am tired," Eddard said. "Cunning is what animals become when they are tired of being hunted." At dawn the bells rang. Eddard stood at a window he could not see through and, Imagine the city making its way toward the throne room like ants toward sugar. Under the floor, he felt the tower breathe. The hands men formed in a column that had no music and no bravery in it, only a hard patience. Ser Ares looked as if he had not slept. Sansa looked as if she had slept and dreamed something she had already forgotten. Myrcella's hands were folded. Tommen held Sansa's sleeve. They crossed the yard with gold cloaks above them like a geometry no man liked and pretending not to. They did not go toward the royal apartments. They went toward the steps that climbed to the September Slint, watched them go with the look of a man who had put money on a horse and realized the saddle was empty. He sent men to follow. Ser Ares turned once and said, "No," and something in his voice made even sly Janos's men take 2 steps back. The great doors of the sept were open. The mother looked down on them, all compassion ruined a little by smoke. The smith held his hammer as if it were heavy because it was meant to be. The stranger faced away. The High Septon was a moon-faced man who had never cared for anything but his next meal until this morning, when he put bread in the children's hands and salt in their mouths and said words large and old that even Cersei would have to look at rather than ignoring. Myrcella's shoulders set as if someone had laid a weight on them and she had decided to carry it. Tommen cried a little, and it was not unmanly. In the throne room, Joffrey sat with a sword across his knees like a promise. Cersei was gold as ever and hard as she needed to be. Littlefinger had found a place at the edge of things where his shadow was long and his body could be easily forgotten. Varys picked at his sleeves. Pycelle snored artfully. Janos Slynt stood with twice the men he had had yesterday and half the nerve. "The traitor will confess," Joffrey said. His voice cracked and he did not flinch from it. He had not learned shame yet. "He will say it was all lies and then he will die. I want his head stuck on a spike for dogs." "No," Cersei said, "too quick. No speakes." Then slower. "The hand will bend. He is northern. They bend like oaks." She did not believe it. She hoped it. Hope was a pittance, but men had bought bread with less. Eddard called for a septon and sent a message with him dressed up as confession, dressed up as surrender. It said, "The children are under the mother's eye. Let the queen stand before the faith and ask for what she means to take." He signed it Eddard Stark and did not sign it Lord Protector because names could crawl off a page and bite men. Cersei read. The muscle in her jaw jumped. She handed the paper to Littlefinger. Littlefinger's eyes skimmed it and flicked up to Eddard. He tilted his head, measuring a man he had measured 100 times and found new numbers all the same. The High Septon came with an armload of sanctimony and a column of beggar brothers. He was not a brave man. He was a man whose belly had never been empty longer than a day. But there were high things painted on his ceiling and old things in his books, and this morning he remembered them. "Even kings kneel," he said to the room. "Even kings." Joffrey laughed and then stopped laughing because no one else laughed. Cersei moved her hand an inch on the arm of her chair, and all the men who watched her saw something different in the same movement. Surrender, defiance, calculation, grief. She stood. "We will go to the sept," she announced, and the room breathed. "And we will take back the Queen's children and thank Lord Stark for his kindness." They went. The city poured after them. The steps of the Great September held a multitude. When Cersei mounted them, with Joffrey at her side, she had a moment of being seen not as a queen but as a woman who had thought herself beyond ordinary law and found herself standing before it. She did not stumble. She did not bend her head. She went through the doors like a ship goes through a harbor mouth under too much sail. In the nave stood Ser Ares, gray with lack of sleep and some other thing that made his skin shine. Behind him, the children and Sansa and Septa Mordain, and a crowd of the poor, who had taken one look at the doors and the gold and decided they were safest inside prayer. The High Septon lifted his hands. "By the laws of sanctuary." "The laws of sanctuary are for criminals," Cersei said. "These are my children." "They are," the High Septon said, "and I am their mother until I am asked to be otherwise." He looked at Eddard. He looked at the small boy with his fists knotted in his sister's skirts. "We offer safekeeping." "Under your gods," Cersei said, contempt and rage making a new alloy in her throat. "I do not kneel to your 7. Yet your husband did, the High Septon murmured, and the city does. He looked past her, toward a sea of faces that had come for spectacle and found themselves a congregation. Do you wish a riot? Cersei never wished a riot. She wished men to do as she commanded. She wished the world to be one wall she could lean her back against, and every man who approached to find he faced two of her. She looked at Slint. He looked back, and for once the butcher did not know how to carve meat off this bone. She looked at Littlefinger. He smiled the way a man in a play smiles when he has found the line he does not have to say. She looked at Eddard, and what she saw on his face made hers tilt a fraction, because he had no triumph in him, only a weight of care and a promise he did not mean to break. One night, she said again, and once more the words tasted like failure. One night. In the morning you will bring them to me. Ser Ares nodded without taking his eyes off of her. In the morning, he said. Eddard slept a little in the back of a sept cell and dreamed of falling snow that made no sound. He woke to Varys, who had come dressed as a begging brother and smelled of nothing. You are making something new, the eunuch said, and it frightens even me. I am making time, Eddard said. Enough for letters to arrive. Enough for men to remember they have oaths to something besides lions. Time, Varys murmured. There is never enough for any of us. In the morning the world tilted. A rider came from the east with salt on his cloak and the smell of the narrow sea on his boots. The letters had found Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon had not come. Stannis would not come until he had set his house at his back and counted his iron and weighed his men. But Stannis had sent a raven and a knight with clean armor and a voice like a grating hinge. He went to the sept and went to the queen and said, before all, Lord Stannis names himself Robert's heir and commands you to stand aside. Commands? Cersei said, in a tone that stripped the word down to its sad bones. Commands? The city listened. Men threw their loyalties into the air like coins and saw how they fell. Janos Slynt made a quick calculation that required him to change nothing and waited. Peter Baelish touched two fingers together and put them apart again. The small folk shouted, not because they understood any of it, but because they liked to shout, and a parade and kings were only useful to them when they were shouted at. Ser Barristan Selmy stood very straight and looked very tired. Eddard walked from the sept with the children and took them back to the Tower of the Hand in the open day with all the city as his witness, and for once no one raised a hand. He had given the thing a shape and a name. He had said, sanctuary. He had said, guests. He had said, bread and salt. There were more old tongues than there were swords. By noon, the first Tyrell men-at-arms that Renly had coaxed into his service were gone completely from the city. By afternoon, the butchers' guilds were leaning toward the queen for fear of the hungry mouths that would be hungry still, and the dockmen toward whoever could keep the quays free of fires. By evening, Eddard had tea with Varys and water with the High Septon and swallowed both as if they were poison and left the same taste. Tomorrow, Cersei said to him when they stood in the God's Wood again by the garden oak that had usurped a dead god's place. Tomorrow, Lord Stark, you will bring them. Tomorrow, Eddard said, we will speak, in the throne room, before the council, before the faith, before the people who bear the king's burdens whether they like it or not. You will hear me, and you will go to Casterly Rock. You always think the road ends where you decide to stop, she said. That is why northerners die so far from home. She stepped closer. If you love them, do not drag them through this. If you love your own, girls with pretty hair and ugly tempers, if you love them, do not drag them through this. I have not dragged anyone, he said softly. I have stood where men ran. That is all. She laughed once. It was a sound like glass. You are very sure you know what you are doing. I am not sure of anything, he said, but I know what I will not do. I will not bend before a lie that eats children. In the morning he walked between a world of swords. The children went before him, Ser Ares by their side. Sansa wore white and looked like a ghost. Tommen wore green and looked like a leaf that would not let go. Myrcella wore her mother's poise and the same poise as cracks. Desmond and Will marched before and behind. Varley disappeared and reappeared like breath. The city watched. It had stopped breathing the night before. It had begun again. The throne room thrummed with heat and men and something that felt like the air under a tent about to be slashed. Cersei sat to the right of the iron monstrosity that had been melted out of a foolish conqueror's fear. Joffrey sat upon it despite his thin legs and the way the blades tried to teach him the lesson it taught every king. Sit easily and be cut. Littlefinger had found himself a shadow to wear. Janos Slynt had purchased more men and was using them like jewelry. Varys's face expressed appetite for nothing but news. Eddard Stark told the room what the books had told him, what his eyes had told him, what Robert's letters should have told themselves. That a boy's hair color could convict a queen. That bastards declared themselves if anyone bothered to look. That honor, like a hound, always came when called and often dragged a man where he did not want to go. He told them that the true heir was Stannis Baratheon, and that the wolf would stand with the stag if the lion would not learn to live among men. The words went out into a place where words did not always return. Men shifted. Women whispered. Joffrey's mouth worked around fury and found nothing to feed on that did not choke him. Cersei's hands took in the arms of her chair the way a sea takes in a storm. Lies, she said. Let the gods judge, Eddard said. And when he said gods, he meant all the names he knew for fairness and none of them by their true name. Trial, by combat if you like, or by men with books and eyes. I will prove what I say, and when I prove it, you will go. Go, Joffrey squeaked. Boy for a heartbeat. Where? Home, Eddard said. He let the word be a mercy and a banishment both. Where you can grow into men and women without a crown's weight snapping your neck. He felt the shift before he saw it, the way a man from the north feels the weather change through his skin and pain. Ser Barristan moved. He moved not toward the queen, not toward the boy, but toward the center of the room where he could be between any two men who rushed and call it duty regardless. Janos Slynt lifted a finger and thought better of it. The gold cloaks held their line. Ser Meryn wiped his lips and frowned. Ser Aerys stood very straight. Cersei rose. We will not run, she said. We will not hide. She looked at the children and could not keep from it. Not this time. We will not bow to your northern nonsense. You think? She stopped. Bring me my children. She did not shout it. She did not make it a cry to be answered with a rush. She made it a command that counted on custom and love alike. Ser Aerys did not move. That surprised Eddard more than anything this whole coil had produced. He had thought the boy would search his soul and find nothing in it but white vows. He had thought he would bring the children and think himself noble for it, the way noble men always did when they did what relieved them of the worst of their burden and left it for someone else. Ser Aerys did not move. Your Grace, Ser Aerys said very quietly, as if he were trying not to wake someone. They are under the faith's protection. He swallowed. And I have given them my word, I will not hand them to armed men. Cersei did not look at him. Janos Slynt looked at all the swords and at all the men holding them and remembered that many of those swords were paid for by him, and many of those men were not the sort who did what they were paid to do when children were in the room. He had never in his life loved anything enough to put it before coin, but he had a daughter. She liked ribbons. She liked to laugh. He thought of her without meaning to, cursed himself for it, and then cursed again because the thought would not be banished. Perhaps, he said to Cersei, and the word came with dirt in it. Perhaps a day, while he coughed. Review the evidence of, evidence. Cersei turned on him. For a moment, fear made the room small and utterly hers. Evidence. She smiled and was beautiful and terrible both. The evidence sits before you in a crown. Eddard felt everything slide. He had imagined this moment many ways. He had not imagined this one. It was the one the city's gods had decided on all the same. He thought of ice beneath foot, the way you could feel it sag and hold and sag and hold and then, with no change in sound, give way. He did not know what would be on the other side of this. He knew only that he had done what he could to shove children up onto solid ground before the crack ran. Sometimes that was all a man was allowed, to lift and push and hope and drown. Joffrey stood. He had a boy's anger and a boy's courage. which is to say it burned fast and bright and in the wrong direction. He put a hand on the hilt of the sword on his lap. "I am the king," he said. The room bristled for the line that always followed. He gave it and made it a knife for his own throat. "Kill him." "No," Cersei said, in a tone that would have stopped a boar's heart. But the command was out and the room was a tinderbox already, and Janos Slynt had 5 men too eager to have a story to tell and the wrong story to tell about it. They lunged. Eddard had time to think. Not here, not in front of them. He had time to think Sansa and Myrcella and Tommen. He had time to think Arya, go, go. He did not have time to draw breath, let alone steal. The first man tripped over Desmond's spear. Desmond had not meant to be where he was. He had meant to be nearer the door. He was where he was. He drove his spear but into the man's knee and the man screamed, and then all the screaming started. Steel came up like wheat. Ser Barristan cut left, then right with empty hands, catching wrists, turning blades aside, doing everything a sword could do without being one. Ser Aerys did what he had always done and what had never been asked of him. He put his body between a mother and her son and a city and its worst self. Eddard saw the blue of Myrcella's ribbon. He saw Tommen stumble and Sansa catch him up because Sansa was better than any song would have you believe. He saw Littlefinger step away as if the very air pressed him back and thought, "Gifts," and the word made even less sense than before. "Stop!" The High Septon shouted. But the gods were deaf to his voice as they were to any man's when blood heated stone. "By the Mother's mercy, Mother's mercy," Varys murmured in Eddard's ear. "If you have ever hidden any of it in a pocket, Lord Stark, spend it now." "Stand down," Eddard bellowed, and there was a hammer in his throat after all. "Stand down, all of you, stand down." Cersei did the thing Eddard had not imagined she could do. She went to her knees before all the city, not before gods and not before law, but before necessity. She put her hand over Joffrey's on the sword and forced it back into its scabbard. She looked up at Eddard with a face that had forgotten how to be beautiful and knew only how to be a mask. "One day," she said, "you will pay for this." "Perhaps," he said, and the word was a rope he threw to the room. Enough hands grabbed for it. The room found its balance one terrible inch at a time. The men who had moved to kill him stood uncertain with their blades and their choices. Janos Slynt's breath sounded like bellows in a far-off forge. Ser Barristan slowly lowered his hands until they were only hands again. Ser Aerys leaned his head back against a pillar and closed his eyes. It did not last. Nothing lasts. But for that moment, for that hour, the city did not tear itself in two. The children lived. Sansa lived. Tommen lived. Myrcella lived. Eddard Stark's heart beat in his chest like something trapped. He thought of the letters on the road and of the man on Dragonstone counting ships. He thought of Robb in the Grey Hills and of Catelyn with her police of love and ferocity. He thought of winter and of the way men could stand a very long time if they knew which door to keep shut and which to open. He thought tomorrow and did not trust the word, and then he thought today and found he could hold it for another breath and another. When Varys came to him later, in a corridor that remembered the day in a string of scuffs and a smear of blood like old wax, the eunuch's eyes were tired. "You have bought us a little while," he said, "and perhaps you have bought the realm a different story than the one we all expected." "I have bought children one more night to sleep," Eddard said. "It is enough." "It is not enough," Varys said. Then he smiled sadly. "But it is the only currency that spends." "My lady will skin me," Eddard said, and surprised himself by smiling. "Your lady will be proud," Varys said. "She will never say so, of course." "Of course," Eddard echoed. He went back to the Tower of the Hand. He went back to the place where bread and salt sat open to the air and men slept in armor and children whispered themselves to sleep rather than cry. He went back to the place that was not his and yet was. He sat with his back against cool stone, cane across his lap, and set himself to the work of holding a door. He had learned that day it could be important work. He had learned that day how very heavy doors could be. He set his shoulders and leaned. Night came down slow and sultry over the Red City. Somewhere, A cat caught a bird and left its feathered ghost on a windowsill. Somewhere, gold changed hands in the dark. Somewhere, messages returned unstamped and undelivered, and other messages slipped between fingers and found their way under doors like drafts. The moon came up and made the Blackwater a blacker knife. The tower breathed. The wolf kept his watch. He did not know what would come in the morning. He had done what a man could. The rest belonged to the gods, and to men too small to be gods and too weak to be wolves, and therefore more dangerous than both. But for now, within the hard ring of his care, Tommen slept. Myrcella slept. Sansa turned and whispered something to a child who would be a queen or never be anything but the echo of a sister's name. He would take that. He would keep taking that, breath by breath, because all wars were made of breaths, and mercy too, and a man could smuggle a great deal through a door if he kept it ajar with his own heart. He dozed and dreamed of snow falling on hot stone until it hissed and went to steam. In his dream, he saw an oak that had learned gentleness by watching a white tree remember everything. He saw Cersei on a rock that the tide licked at. He saw a boy in a crown learning how not to bleed on blades, and another boy with cats, and a girl who had a knife and no patience for anything but survival. He saw letters like birds. He saw a tower of green glass he did not understand. He woke to the sound of a door moving and did not reach for steel. He stood instead and put his hand to the wood and felt it thrum with the day behind and the day ahead. "Come," he said to it, "if you must." The door held, then swung inward, and the morning stood there with all its teeth. He squared himself to it and walked through, as he had always done, into the thing that would not end until it ended, which was to say, not for a very long time.